All right, it's now the top of the hour, so we will start speaking. I'm Dave Liesse. I'm an accountant in the Seattle area, actually in Federal Way, about 18 miles south of the city, closer to Tacoma than Seattle. And today we're going to be talking about how to formulate your questions in the effective pricing software. A couple of administrative things to start. Excuse me. Number one, we're in the height of the pollen season right now around here, so excuse me for any throat clearing that's going to be necessary. It's also not usual for my air conditioner to kick in at 7:30 in the morning. It has done so. I don't think you'll pick up any background noise, but if you do, I can't really do much about that. And the same with my phone. My handset, I can't change the volume of the ring. Nobody should be calling in our session because we don't open the office till an hour after we're done. But if the phone does ring, I'll do my best to muffle it as much as possible. Most of you have been here before, so you know the drill. If you have a question, put it in the chat with the capital QQ in front. I'm not going to be answering most questions during the presentation. If something comes up with a, I can't hear you, something glitched, we'll address those right away. Other than that, I am a distinguished Toastmaster. I don't write speeches. I don't practice them. I make my outlines. And in this particular case, if I get distracted from the outline, I think I'm going to fumble completely. So any questions on the content very well may be answered later anyway, and then I'll take them at the end. The other thing I would ask is, I'm supposed to do another session in a month and a half or thereabouts. I have no idea what I want to talk about. So if you have any suggestions, something you'd like to hear about, please put those in the chat box as well. We'll record those. I consider myself an advanced beginner with the software. I'm not fresh out of the box myself, but I haven't used it extensively. Just like a good salesman knows one thing more than the person he's selling to, sometimes a good teacher knows just a little bit more than the class. So if you have anything you'd like to hear that's at that level, put it in the chat and we'll consider that for the next class. Most of my classes are something, I teach a lot of tax classes, and most of my subjects are something, I had a problem, I had to do research, I might as well save everybody else the trouble. With that, we will go ahead and get started. As I say, Emily's online. She'll take care of any technical problems. And today we're talking about coming up with your questions. That's what I find the hardest part. You have to develop your packages, which takes long enough. And then you need your questions for the software. How do you come up with those? And more important, how do you order them? If it was simply a matter of a logical order, that's one thing. But we're doing math as we go along. That could be the problem. Let's say, remember the earliest pocket calculators? They were around before several of you were born, I know. But when you entered your calculations, you had everything happened in the order you entered it. If you typed in 2 plus 3 times 4, it's going to add 2 and 3 and then multiply by 4 and you get 20. But according to the rules of math, you should be doing the multiplication first. So you do 3 times 4 is 12, add 2 and get 14. Well, the software works in the linear fashion. So if we have 2 plus 3 times 4, well, the example I have in the handout that'll be available later on afterward, 3 plus 5 times 2 plus 4 squared. According to the rules of math, that would be 400 because 3 plus 5 is 8, multiplied by 2 is 16, add 4 is 20, squared is, I'm sorry, that's the software. It comes out to 400. Whereas if you're doing it in math, you take the 4 squared is 16, add 5 times 2, 10, so you have 26, then add the 3 and 29. Big difference. So it makes a big difference what order you put your questions in. Fortunately, most of our calculations that we're doing, we're not really worried about multiplication. If you're doing a multiply, yes. If you're doing a percentage increase or decrease, that's just multiplication. 15% increase is multiplying by 1.15. 15% decrease is multiplying by 0.85. But most of what we're doing is just adding. Are we doing this? Okay, add that to the price. Are we doing these? Are we doing 3 of these? Well, we have a unit price and we do 3 of that price. Order doesn't matter for addition and subtraction. That's where you can rely on the logic of the order of the questions. Now I'm going to be showing you a demo copy of one of my models. Demo because I don't want to give my actual prices away. It's the one model I have that's active and working. And I still have, well, coming up with the class, I came up with changes to it. But the prices are going to be bogus. Sometimes the authorities in the US really get a little touchy about price collusion. So I don't want to share my prices just to avoid any chance of that. What we're going to look at, we have, excuse me, we have a handful of clients that do their own bookkeeping, but they want us to file their state excise tax returns. And I told you we got the allergies. We need to file their excise tax returns for them. That's all well and good. It's a fairly easy return. So of course, in our packages, we make it sound like there's a lot more involved than there really is to help build the value in their minds. Washington is kind of unique in its tax structures. We have a state-run workers' comp program. We don't have commercial vendors. So we have our L&I, labor and industries taxes. We have Employment Securities Division for the state employment. Then we have the Department of Revenue, which is pretty much everything else. And every taxes, aside from the payroll taxes, goes on the same return, the combined excise tax return. We don't have a state income tax, but we do have what's called the business and occupation tax, which is a gross receipts tax. It's like the old joke on the IRS forms, how much did you make, send it in. This is pretty much how much did you take in, send us 0.4% of it. There are some exceptions. There are deductions, for example, for out-of-state sales. We don't have the B&O tax on those. But we report sales tax on the same form. Most of the accounting systems have found can't handle that concept. They want us to pay the sales tax separately. So we have to jump through hoops to actually make the payment within the software. So far we have the B&O tax, we have sales tax. Some industries will have additional taxes. For example, the lodging industry, they get to pay their lodging taxes. Restaurants, if they do carry out, there's a litter tax. They'll pay for all the buffoons who drop their takeout containers by the side of the road instead of in the garbage cans. There are some credits. Again, the restaurant industry. If they have soda machines in the restaurant that they're filling your Pepsi or Coke or poison of your choice, you can get a credit for the syrup tax that your distributor paid and is baked into your price. So the soda syrups, you get a credit for that. Now on the tax form itself, there are 20 possible industry classifications. There's actually 42, but many of them are shoved into one entry on the form. So I don't know how pharmaceutical warehousing and processing of shelled peas got into the same classification on the form, but they did. They're on one line. Same tax rate. We're going to focus on three because my clients come with essentially three of these industries. We have retailing, wholesaling, and services. Now, in its wisdom, the state has decided those of us in the service businesses get to pay 1.5% because we're not generating any sales taxes. Doesn't matter, they're taking it out of the business instead of out of the customers. We get to pay 1.5%. The others are 0.468 and 0.471, I think. The last I'll mention about the taxes themselves before we go into something you can actually see. The deductions, you can take deductions for your refunds, but in practice, most people just take it out before recording the gross receipts. The state doesn't care in this case because it all comes out the same. They do want to see if you took in 10,000 and 2,000 was out of state sales, they do want to see the 10,000 and the 2,000 deduction. But if you brought in 10 and refunded 1, you can just put in the 9 and they don't care. Technically incorrect, but they're fine with it. That's really the only deduction we ever deal with as well. So it simplifies the demonstration quite a bit. So how do we develop the questions for all of this? I think the questions really need to start with your packages. So these are my packages for the DOR only return. Fairly simple on the screen, but it makes it look like we do a lot. We provide the clients one reminder to send us the information. After that, we get annoyed. We'll prepare the DOR returns based on the information they give. Well, duh, we're not going to make it up. Electronically file the returns. That's required. We'll schedule their payments for them. We can provide the bank account, which is no fee to the clients from the state. We can provide their credit card information. State charges for that because in the US and most states, the government by law cannot absorb the credit card fees. So they all charge extra. We'll give you confirmation by the end of the next business day. If we make mistakes, we'll file the amendments as part of the service. Couple maybe surprising ones, we will automatically renew the business licenses and the reseller permits. I'll get back to those in just a second. Those are all included in our basic package. And you might guess I have an airline background, first class, business class, economy class. Sometimes the cities and the state have some questions. Well, if you want us to answer those questions, we're not going to do that at the basic level. You can answer your own questions. It's your information, not ours. If you make a mistake in what you give us, know that fixing that is not included in the basic package. But you can pay us a little bit extra, sort of as insurance. I forgot to come in and change the model. This should say public works reconciliations. Construction companies working on public works projects have 5% of their pay withheld and not paid until the final reconciliation is filed with the state and the state releases the funds from the local government. We make that available at all levels. Why is it part of a DOR only return? Because it's related to the sales tax, which is on the DOR. Strictly speaking, it's not part of DOR, but it's so tightly related, we make it available as part of this package. But we have very few construction companies doing public works. So that one's an add-on. We make it available, but we don't bake it into the price. if the DOR should come knocking and say, hey, we're auditing your returns. I've done those. They cost a lot of money. So again, if you want to pay some insurance money up front, we will reduce the fees for that audit if you're on our first class package. And by the way, our fee for doing one of these audits is $8,000. We'll give it to you for $4,000 if you're paying for the representation rates. And in this state, they do a lot of auditing. They tend to pick one industry at a time and audit many companies in that industry. And of course, the ones that get picked are the ones that happen to be keeping bad records. So it takes a while to resolve their issues. And the last thing is we have 50 cities in the state that have their own B&O tax returns, separate from the state. The city sales tax gets reported on the DOR return, but the city B&O taxes do not. Those are separate returns. Some of them are using a very miserable service that we should charge double for going through that one. But the problem here is that each city has its own rules for the B&O. City of Auburn, next door to Federal Way, just started their B&O tax this year. You don't pay unless you have $1 million receipts annually. City of Kent, the next one north from Auburn. What you have to pay and how often you have to file dependent on your revenues and the square feet of warehouse. These two cities in particular are implementing their B&O taxes because they have a lot of distribution centers and a few manufacturers, and the trucks are beating up the roads. Well, the trucks aren't fueling up in Auburn, so Auburn's not getting any fuel tax for their roads being destroyed by the distribution centers. So this is their way to finance fixing the roads. City of Seattle, on the other hand, will happily tax anything that moves. Their thresholds, dollar thresholds, are much lower than the other cities. You might have to pay quarterly, you might have to pay annually. Fortunately, at the city level, that's all we have. We don't have monthlies. At the state, we might have to file monthly, quarterly, or annually, depending on, at first, your estimated receipts. And as time goes on and you start making more and more money, the state will say, okay, you get to pay quarterly now. You don't get to wait till the end of the year. We're missing out on too much. And you're probably struggling to make the payment as well. So given all that, what questions might we need to ask in order to come up with the price? Well, we probably would like to know how often they file. If we're filing 12 returns a year rather than one, the price is going to go up, right? Do they do the sales tax? That's extra work for us, just a tiny bit. How many categories are they reporting in? I have one distributor that some of his sales are retail and some are wholesale because he's selling them to other wholesalers. But he is distributor for the factory. So we get to do both retail and wholesale for him. He also does some servicing of the equipment, but under the laws of the state, those are retail services and taxable. So we don't have to worry about services income for him. On the other hand, my own return, I'm a service business, so I get to file services. If you have gaming, if your company is, say you're a bar and you're doing the pull tab sales or whatever, or you're a non-tribal casino, well, there's two to gaming classifications, below and under 50,000 receipts for gaming. We're going to concentrate just on the retail, service, and wholesale. Because that's all my clients use. And that's all I've developed the model for so far. If I get clients in other industries, then we'll accommodate those. Nice thing about the software, it's easily updated. What else might we want to know? City returns. Do you have to file any? And where? As I say, there's 50 cities, exactly 50 cities that have B&O tax. Some of them are specific industries only. Do they do public works? How many returns of those are we going to file in a typical year? Let's take a look at the questions. Well, we start with the state return. Do we file the state return? Well, of course we do. That's why we're doing the model in the first place. That question is there just to establish a starting price. Theoretically, I should be able to do that in the pricing parameters, but for some reason, I haven't been able to get that to start with anything. So we just have this bogus question, do we file the state returns? And that establishes the base price. Yes, we do. Does a client have retail income, services income, wholesale income? Each of these is a separate line entry on the return. So we charge a tiny bit for each one of those. Again, it takes us 10 seconds to make the entry, but it's more work. We're doing more for the client. They don't have to know it only takes 10 seconds. They know it's taking us 10 seconds and probably saving them 3 minutes for each one, because they do this once every month, quarter, or year. We do it constantly. Well, you have the deductions, such as for the out-of-state sales. My distributor really is the only one that takes advantage of those. But yes, that's part of the entry, is figuring out the deductions, which go on a separate subscreen. Will there be the credits? I have 2 restaurants to get the syrup tax credit, so I have to go put that in. We have any additional industry-specific taxes? This would be the restaurants with their litter tax. It would be the lodging with their lodging taxes. I've actually made this question a pull down, a drop down, and if we look at the choices, if I wake up and look at the choices themselves, restaurant or lodging, right now they're the only ones I've ever had with the additional industry taxes. But we can just put in what industry they're in and figure out, okay, they're lodging. We're going to have lodging tax. We're going to have lodging sales tax in addition to the sales tax. Lodging has 3 taxes to worry about. So we'll charge them extra for that. Average number of sales tax locations. Again, we have to report each sales tax location individually. In Washington, we have a state sales tax of 6.5%. Now that's baked into doing retail income, because if you have retail income, you're going to be paying the state sales tax. But if you have more than one location, you're going to be reporting sales tax to more than one city or county. The counties all tax their unincorporated areas as well. And they all have different rates. And just to make matters more fun, some cities might have 4 different rates. Tacoma, for example, has a public transportation benefit area, and they have a public health benefit area. You might have part of the city that's outside the transportation district. You might have part of the city that's outside the hospital district. You might have part of the city that's outside of both. And most of the city is inside all 4. That's 4 different sales tax reporting locations. Fortunately, Department of Revenue has a tool to look up You put in an address, it tells you, here's your location code and the rate. I look at it and see what my folks are charging, saying, by the way, you're not charging the right sales tax at this address. Next month, I look at it, you're still not charging the right sales tax at that address. Who might have multiple locations? Well, my distributor. In Washington, as I think in most states, sales tax is dependent on the point of delivery, not the point you're selling from, with some exceptions. Tow truck companies are charged based on their home base, because you can't just say, well, I'm at mile marker 132.2 on I-5. I don't know what sales tax district that's in. So my tow truck client gets to pay at his home office. So my distributor sells in many different locations. I have some restaurant clients with multiple locations. I have some with a food truck. Well, today he might be selling in Renton, tomorrow he's selling in Tukwila. Tax rate happens to be the same, but I have to report he did 2,000 sales in Renton and 400 in Tukwila. Those are just some examples of who might have to report multiple locations. So we charge for each location because it's another line on the entry. An important question in our case, are you going to report your gross income and sales tax separately? This is another case. Washington state law requires sales tax to be itemized on receipts. And if you're going to give an all-in-one price on your advertisement, you still are supposed to say what the sales tax is in that total price. So you're somewhere in King County with a 10.1% tax. You're selling something for $110.10. You're supposed to split out, that's $100 plus $10.10 tax. Getting the people to actually do that is another matter. And we have some clients that will just give us their total that they took in. Well, I took in $110.10. We have to split that out, so we're charging them for doing their job. We will add to the price if we need to figure out, okay, you sold this, we divide by the tax rate. These are your receipts, and that's the tax. And then finally, how often do you file your DOR return? This is the one that becomes where the placement becomes critical. We don't want to put it up here. We file the tax return, yes. Call it $60 for the base price. Do we do it how often? Well, we do it annually. So once, $60. But we do it monthly, 12 times. Now it became $720. But if we had that question up here at the start, and that's the logical place to ask it. But now it's only going to multiply that base rate, and all of these little additional fees are not going to benefit from that multiplication. So if we did this and let's see what we see with the return. See, I moved the question up here. Do we file the state return? Yes. Let's do it monthly for the effect. Calculate, just using all the defaults. That's telling us $699. Let's go back to the questions and put it back where it belongs. Do we review again? All the questions, we're not fooling with the answers, just taking the defaults. Calculate again. Except I forgot to change that one. Monthly. That $699 just became $996. So you can see that it's important to get your multipliers in the right place. And you need to think those through. Now, if we go back to the questions, I'm doing the city returns separately because they're not necessarily on the same schedule as the state. As I mentioned, the cities all make up their own rules. And because there's 50 cities, and those 50 cities each have 2 or 3 guidelines on do we need to file at all and how often, I've just boiled down the questions here. How many cities do you need to file an annual return? How many do you need to file a quarterly return? I have the chart. I can figure out, we can ask, okay, well, you sell in Bothell, Redmond, Renton, Seattle, Tacoma, and Chehalis. Chehalis has no returns. We don't have to worry about that. You don't meet the threshold for Renton. But you need to file quarterly in Seattle and annually in the other 2. So that means we're going to be looking at a total of 6 city returns. So I can't just go with the number of cities you're filing in, because some of them are doing 4 returns, some are doing 1. So I ask the 2 questions separately. And these are just unit price and number of units. How many cities multiplied by the price to get the city returns. Again, I didn't update the section title. I thought I did. But the public works. How many public works do you file in a typical year? 99 out of 100 of my clients, that'll be 0. But I have one construction client that does a lot of public works projects. They do a lot of work excavating for the school districts. And they have 2 or 3 a year. So we put that in, and bingo, that's accounted for. The other thing that's important to remember, I could have put the public works in as an enhancement, right? Because not everybody gets it. We could do it as an enhancement. But we offer a discount to anybody who lets us hold their credit card information on file and automatically bill the card every month. We don't do ACH payments strictly because the bank fees for that we don't have enough clients wanting to do that to make it worth the fees that the bank would charge us. But the credit card fees are minimal by comparison. We have an excellent process here. If you need to know about that, ask me later. We'll chat offline. Right now, we have the credit card as a reward. Because philosophically and logically and emotionally, it is a reward. If you let us charge it automatically so we don't have to bill you, we don't have to hound you for your payment, we don't have to wonder if the check is getting lost in the mail. And yes, we do have a lot of people still using checks. We give you 5% off if you let us do that. But again, the way the software works, enhancements come after the rewards. So if my public works questions were enhancements, they wouldn't get that 15% discount. I'd have to ask the question again and apply it to the public works. So the public works questions are part of the main questions, even though they don't apply to most of my clients. I'm also thinking about moving the rewards, the credit card question, up into the base questions at the end. It's a percentage discount, so that's a multiplier, and we need it after the entire price has been calculated. That way, number one, I don't forget to ask the question. And number two, if I have to send this out to somebody for them to answer, I don't have a lot of DOR only clients, so they tend to be not so tech savvy. So they would probably have to get this in the form of a questionnaire anyway. And then I send them the proposal afterward. Well, if I put it in the reward section, it may or may not go with the questions. So I'm thinking of moving it up to the general questions. I don't have a lot of clients doing the DOR only. This is all baked into our bookkeeping service. We will do all these filings for you. Similarly, the payroll taxes are baked into the payroll services. But we do have those few who think they can just keep their records on pencil and paper. And of course, we get numbers like I spent 300 on that and 200 on that and even 1,000 on that. And I made an even 5,300. Yeah, sure you did. But that's what they tell us. And to the best of our knowledge, they're correct because we ask. Yep, those are right. Like the IRS, there's only so far we're required to take the due diligence. The law assumes we can trust what the clients give us if it doesn't seem majorly out of line. If we had a motel that reported $100 of income for the month, something's a little weird there. Even in the pandemic, they're selling 3 rooms a night. That's $250 minimum right there. So the order of the questions is important when you get these multipliers. You want to be sure that questions are complete. Now, I told you back in the beginning, looking at the packages, I was going to talk about these 2, renewing the licenses and permits. The reason those are in here, those are DOR functions. Those are done through the Department of Revenue, even though eventually the money goes through the Department of Licensing, the Department of Revenue handles the actual renewal. The notice goes to whoever's the administrator on the online account. That's us. The client doesn't have the opportunity to do this on his own. And that's why it's important to run your packages by your staff if you have a staff. I don't normally do these returns. I do for one client because he was my client before I purchased the other practice that my business partner / office manager came from. She does all of these except that one. And we don't have to worry about a lot for him. She handles these and she gets these notices and says, you can't leave that out of the basic package because we're the only ones who can do it anyway. Oh, okay. So we'll put it in here and increase the price accordingly to cover having to do those. So develop your packages. We're not talking about that today. Just moved something by accident, probably put it back where it was supposed to be in the first place. I'm prone to accidentally clicking the mouse and dragging something I didn't know about, and I just did that. You want to be sure you have all the questions you can think of that have to do with the service you're developing your pricing model for. For the DOR only, it's simple enough that I could use that one as the demo. Payroll model's a nightmare. But I made sure that the multiplication question is at the end. So we get the base price and then multiply by how many times do we have to do it. Then we add in the city returns that are completely separate from the state returns. And then the public works after that because it's completely separate again. And then that reward will apply to the entire price, or, well, it'll apply to the entire price as a reward, or if I move it up here, it'll be the final question. That pretty well covers what I wanted to talk to you about today. We got lots of time for questions. So let me stop sharing. You can see my beautiful face again. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat box with the QQ. Comments are welcome as well. Let's see, I do have one suggested topic for next time: common tax breaks for small businesses and the overlooked items. I'll have to think about that because my training is supposed to be related to the software. But we'll make a note of that, and if we can make it apply to a worldwide audience, or we can figure out how to work that topic into the software, we'll definitely do that. How to determine the pricing? Well, in this case, we've in the past had a flat fee for doing these returns. What I wanted to do is break it down into more of, related more to the tasks involved in there. So how many levels of income are we reporting? As I say, it takes 10 seconds of our time to enter this line. Maybe 5 more if there's a deduction as well, because that's reported on the same line. So what we wanted to do is increase the base price, but also not charge the same for everyone, because not everybody does the sales tax, and they shouldn't have to be paying the same as the folks who don't. Not everybody does city B&Os. We charge for them separately anyway. That's not an issue. If you're good, reporting the gross income and the sales tax separately like they're supposed to, if we have to break it apart for them, they need to be, I'll be honest, they need to be penalized for that. That's their work. They're supposed to be doing that before they present the information to their customers. So there's no reason they can't present it to us that way. So we're doing their work. We're going to charge them extra for that. The trick was, this is a function where we have to be careful that we're not charging $250 every time, because nobody will pay that. We know that. We've traditionally charged, I think the last price was $65 per return, flat rate. Well, this is going up a little bit. I think in the model here, I have it set with 56 starting price, 58 starting price for doing the return. Then we add 6 for each of the items. Are there deductions? Add another 6. Credits to enter, another 6. Industry-specific taxes, another 6. I like adding 6s for some reason. I think I charge a little more for the sales tax because that requires a little bit extra work on our part. So it's a matter of okay, yes, David, I'll do that in a minute. Put your prices in, go through the review a few times and tweak things. If it comes out what even you think is a ridiculously high amount, I can't charge $125 for one of these returns unless it's 20 sales tax and 3 city sales tax, or 20 sales tax, 3 public works a year. Yes, that's going to come out to more than $125 a month. But a plain old basic DOR return, 65 to 70 is reasonable under our old thinking. We've increased that a bit, but we're also putting the people on a contract now and with the deduction available. So does that answer Jan's question? If it doesn't, then ask me to clarify. David is asking me to show the review tab, which we will do. Okay, so we're charging 56. I guess that is 56. It looked like 58 on the screen. But with this font and my vision, 6s and 8s look a little different when I'm farther away. Let's take a look at my distributor. He's a bookkeeping client, so he doesn't go through this particular routine. We don't have to do services income for him. So we'll turn that to no. Deductions for out-of-state sales, oh, you betcha. Probably half his sales are out-of-state. Any credits to enter? No. He sometimes gets the small business credit, but that's calculated automatically by the state system when the return is filed. If your total B&O tax comes below a certain threshold, which varies based on the frequency, then you can get a credit of up to that amount on your B&O tax. Sales tax, you still have to remit. Okay, industry-specific taxes, no, he's not a restaurant or a lodging. So we'll say none. Average number of sales tax locations to report, I'd say probably 5. So city sales tax, yes, this is the number of units and the unit price question, so it's going to come out the same either way, but we default to yes. Do you report gross income and sales tax separately? Well, yes, he does it right because I do his books. I've got all his invoices and everything's entered properly, so we'll say yes. How often does he do the DOR return? He's monthly. How many cities for B&O tax? Well, he doesn't have to do any because he doesn't have enough sales in any particular location to have to file. He has a few clients, customers of his own in Seattle, but he doesn't reach Seattle's income requirement. So there will be no city returns for him. Public Works, he's not in construction, so that's not an issue. So we'll do the old calculate button here. So now we can see there's his 56 for the state return. Add 6 for doing retail, add 6 for doing wholesale, 6 because he has out-of-state sales, he has deductions. It's another 6. Told you I like 6s. No credits, no industry specific. 5 sales taxes at, I did them at 7 each, so that's an additional 35. So you see on the city sales tax, which is the unit price question, we've gone up 35 from the 74. He reports separately like he should, and he files monthly. So we take that 109 and multiply by 12 to get 1308. No city returns, so that stays at 1308. No public works, still stays at 1308. And since this is multiplying by 12, we're given a monthly price. I move the chat box out of the way so I can see. And gee, what a surprise, $109 for that monthly fee. Now, if he wants the business class, I have a multiplier of 1.2. So that's going to be 130. And remember, that gives him insurance against client mistakes. And it also means we will answer questions from the taxing agencies if they question the returns. The first class package also adds the full audit protection. So they only pay us half of the $8,000 we really do charge for one of those audits. Those are not simple. So he gets his monthly payments 109, 130, or 163. Does that do it, Dave? Great. Any other questions? We still have 10 minutes available. Doesn't look like there's more. There we go. Will your price be reduced based on the number of returns? For example, if the client gives you 5,000 returns, will you give them a discount? No, because these are all really in isolation. We have the DOR returns, which would be part of the this would be part of a bookkeeping package, and that would be baked into that. But no client is going to have multiple DOR returns. We do charge them for the individual city returns by the city. And no, I'm not going to give a discount because each one is a separate filing, and each, as I mentioned, some cities are using a common software provider to get those reports. But that software provider designing their input forms comes from the Rube Goldberg's School of Software Design. Those are some of the worst forms I've seen. Also, if you're in Washington, you know anything developed by the Employment Securities Department is a complete nightmare and worthless. The other returns, as I say, it doesn't matter here. We've toyed with the idea of giving discounts for multiple product lines, and we don't put that into our pricing models. But in fact, if we're doing more than one service for somebody, we will give them a discount because many of them overlap. For example, if we're doing payroll and bookkeeping, the payroll feeds right into the bookkeeping. We're doing them both anyway at the same time, so we'll put that together and give them a little discount for that. Yes, there is a lot involved with the software. Base price $1308,981 is one payment. That's for the basic economy class, which we don't offer. It's only economy, business, and first, but the review in the model editor gives you your basic economy and supersonic as well. So the client wouldn't ever see those three, they're turned off, or those two, they're turned off on the display. All they see is the economy, business, and first. Let's see. In your bookkeeping package, do you have all the same questions? I haven't really developed my bookkeeping package yet because there's a lot more to think about. And right now, our company is in that stage. I'm the accountant. Leslie, my partner, is the office manager, and she can do some of the basic work. She can do the payroll, except for our drywaller. They're another set of rules entirely, so I do that one. She does it, most of these standard tax returns, income tax returns I do. She likes to say she's not qualified. That's nonsense. She's just not an enrolled agent. But that's her excuse for passing it off to me, and that's fine because the clients don't bother her, and she can answer the phone so they don't call me. But we're at that point where there's too much work for me, but not enough work to afford to hire an additional worker yet. We're in that state of limbo that small companies are in. So I'm overwhelmed during the tax season, but then in the off season, we're actually skipping a paycheck or two now and then, putting the money back into the company because we can't afford to pay ourselves. We pay what we need to pay our minimal bills, and then hope that we get more next month. Which is why we're branching out and more into the bookkeeping of things. And I'm working on that model, but when I do, these questions will be put in there, maybe not in exactly the same form. For example, I won't need to ask about, are you going to report them separately because we're going to do the books? Of course they are. And just incidentally, we do offer a discount on income tax returns if we are doing the bookkeeping, because we know we're not going to have to do the bookkeeping again for them. Now, the way tax returns work in the US, certain businesses based on the amount of assets have to file a balance sheet with the tax return. It never balances. And that's probably what takes the longest on a business return, is getting the balance sheet to balance. Because the tax balance sheet is not the same as the book balance sheet. And especially where there's partner capital involved or shareholder capital, that's one of the worst areas. Because they conveniently don't tell me how much money they took out of the business for themselves. Why do I have this fluctuation in income? Do you not have all your clients paying monthly subscription? I don't have my income tax clients paying monthly. Most of them come in once a year. We're happy to see you again. And our income tax rates are below average. They're not low, but maybe slightly below average on the individual returns. Business returns were slightly above average. And for income tax returns, the vast majority are not bookkeeping clients. It's strange. We do the bookkeeping, and for most of them, we do the taxes. My distributor, I do his bookkeeping, but I don't do his taxes because I got him as a bookkeeping client from his tax preparer who was getting out of the bookkeeping business. So that's kind of an oddball situation. But the income tax returns, no, I don't charge monthly, because let's say it's a $300 return, they're going to send me, what is that? 300 divided by 12, 25 a month. It's easier for them, just give me $300 all at once. But we have the other rule there. You get your return when you pay for it, and you pay for it when you get it, to put it bluntly. So we don't file until we're paid. Any more questions? Still have a couple minutes if you do. Going once. Yep. Do I do fiduciary returns? Fiduciary returns for tax returns, yes, I do. And I do charge differently for the different types of returns. The individual returns are one rate, business returns another rate. Fiduciary returns, I have a set rate, but some of them are extremely simple, like a trust that has one item of income. Well, I'm not going to charge them $1,500 for that. So I will adjust the price downward if I think it's appropriate. Same with amended returns. I have a high starting price, but sometimes it's a matter of there is one 1099 that showed up 2 months after the return. And it is worth enough to file the amendment. But I can't justify a full return for it, for entering 3 lines on a form, especially now they're electronically filed as well. So the trusts and estates, nonprofits are also a different rate, and that depends on whether they're the 990 EC or a Form 990. Okay, one more question. Why did I choose to be an EA versus a CPA? That's easy. I don't have an accounting degree. To be a CPA, you must have an accounting degree, and you have to work 1,000 hours under the supervision of a CPA. My bachelor's degree is atmospheric sciences, and I've been working with computers since I was 10. So I went into the Air Force as a weather officer and was first assigned to the Weather Center as the officer in charge of a programming team. Actually, the database management team. So we were responsible for the databases on the system as well as all of the system subroutines used by all the other divisions. Then I worked in computers for 30 years until I got laid off in the recession of 2008. We were doing accounting software that focused on hedge funds. And 2008, you know what happened to the hedge funds. So the powers that be in my company decided we don't need a quality department anymore. So the quality manager got his walking papers. I was looking around for more work. I also finished my MBA the same year, August of 2008. And that's in airport management. 2008, nobody's hiring for anything. I thought that would be a recession. That's something can't be outsourced overseas. So I said, hey, that's a great career field. It's always interested me. So 2010, I moved back out here from Chicago. The relatives I moved back there to be with had all died, and I was getting tired of waiting for trains in the winter for 18 years. So I moved back here where I'd been before, and all my family had moved here, and happened to visit my parents' tax advisor. Now that's interesting, because I like doing taxes. I like working one-on-one with people. So I made an appointment to talk to him after tax season. I expected 20, 30 minutes. 2 hours later, I left the office. And that night, he took me to his chapter meeting, the Washington State Tax Consultants. And it was nice. I wish I'd known they were paying for the meal. I wouldn't have ordered the industrial chicken. I would have had the steak. I didn't have the money in my pocket to pay for a steak. And I figured, you know what, I'm halfway between this chapter and another one. So I went to visit the other one too, and I've been there ever since. The first one, to be honest, is a bunch of old fuddy-duddies. 75 members, and I think the average age was 70. The chapter I'm in now, we call ourselves the rabble-rousers. We get things done. We're rowdy, we have a lot of fun. We've won chapter of the year 5 out of the last 8 years, so that says something about us. And yes, tax return fees do seem low. It depends on what they are. A lot of my returns are a straight 1040 SR, no schedules, no extra forms, no nothing. And the practice I bought, where I got most of my clients, the previous owner was known for fire sales. She would charge based on what she thought people could afford. There was no rhyme or reason to it. And she was, well, we'll make up for it in quantity. I can't take the $80 returns and increase them to $350 in 1 year and lose 80% of the client base. That doesn't work. So we've been raising rates gradually every year, and we do have a higher set of rates for new clients. The older ones, yes, they go up year by year. Newer ones will start sooner. How did I start my fiduciary tax? Okay, we're a little over, but I can answer that one question. I just did it. I do a lot of teaching for the Washington State Tax Consultants. Last year, I had 7 hours of teaching credits in addition to my 72 hours of education I obtained. In fact, I was supposed to teach this week, but I had to swap with next month because next month's speaker can't speak next month. So good, I'm only developing one class at a time, thank goodness. So I'll be teaching that at our chapter next month and another chapter 2 months later. Started the fiduciary tax. This either because somebody died and I either had to do the estate return or I had to do the trust return, probably the estate income tax return. And there's really nothing special about those returns. They're no more complicated than the standard individual tax return. And in fact, most returns are fairly simple. They may have a lot more questions to fill out, and it may be harder to track down some of the information for some of the line items, especially with businesses and the nonprofits. Because one thing nonprofits have in common is if they're small enough that they don't have an accountant on staff, is that they don't have a qualified bookkeeper. They have a volunteer who's elected by the membership every year or two, keeping the books in Excel and taking in 50,500 every year, so they're over the threshold for the electronic postcard. So getting the information out of them is really the hardest part. Somebody just came to me, or I get a lot of referrals. Most people don't want to do the nonprofits. That's where I started, because I had been that bookkeeper, the treasurer for many nonprofits, but I knew how to do it. I said, and I know they don't, so let me help them with their returns. And that's when they immediately raised the filing threshold from 25 to 50,000, of course, so most of that market disappeared. But that's still where I started, and my colleagues know I'm the go-to guy for nonprofits and for foreign income. I get most of the FBAR returns from people because they get one or two a year. They don't want to be bothered learning how to do it. Now we can file it from the tax software. It's not as onerous, and they're doing it themselves too. But we're over time now, so I'm going to let you go. Emily put a link in the chat for an evaluation. So we appreciate that. So I know they know whether it's worth having me back, and I know where I can improve for your needs, because my needs don't matter here. I'm trying to help you with your journey through the effective pricing. So we'll get the usual few minutes of outro music. Yes, I have a services price list, but I don't publish it. Partly because I'm moving to the model here where it's not going to be a fixed list. And partly because the IRS rules is once you publish a price, you must honor it for a minimum of 6 months. No, thanks. I want flexibility to change it myself. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that was all the announcements. You get the music for a few minutes to close down. I can review the questions. I think we saw everything. And fill out that survey. If you have any further questions for me, you can probably send them to Sarah, support@wixom.co.uk, and they'll get back to me. Have a great day.